So there's this incredible story that's been circulating online, in podcasts, and even in a few history-adjacent books. The claim goes like this. During Japan's Warring States period, specialized shinobi operated as a kind of feudal real estate agency. They would construct elaborate fake castles on strategically worthless land, forge documents proving ownership and military value, and then trick rival warlords into purchasing these properties, draining their treasuries and luring their armies into indefensible positions. Professional ninja real estate agents running the greatest property scams in military history. It sounds absolutely incredible. And that's because it is. It's not true. But the reason people believe it, and the real history hiding underneath this myth, is honestly more fascinating than the fiction. Let's lay out the full version of the legend, because it's genuinely creative. According to the popular telling, clans in the Iga and Koga regions didn't just train shinobi to assassinate and spy. They allegedly developed an entire sub-profession focused on territorial deception. These so-called land shinobi would scout out a piece of terrain that looked impressive from a distance, maybe a hilltop with a commanding view or a valley with a natural choke point, and then they'd build what appeared to be a fortified position there. Watchtowers, palisade walls, sometimes even partial stone foundations mimicking the style of a real castle. The story claims they would then plant agents in nearby towns to spread rumors about the strategic importance of this location. Maybe invent a water source that didn't exist, or exaggerate the fertility of surrounding farmland. Eventually, a rival daimyo would hear about this magnificent fortification, and through intermediaries, the shinobi would broker a sale or exchange, convincing the lord to commit troops and resources to a position that was actually a trap. Some versions say the land was simply worthless. Other versions say it was deliberately positioned to be vulnerable to attack from the clan that sold it. A feudal Japanese version of selling someone the Brooklyn Bridge. The internet loves this story. It fits perfectly with the image of ninja as these impossibly clever shadow operatives who could outwit anyone. There's just one problem. There is no primary source from the Sengoku period that describes anything like this. So how did this story get started? The answer lies in a collision between three real things that got blended together into one fake thing. First, there's the very real tradition of shinobi espionage and disinformation. Second, there's the documented military practice of constructing decoy fortifications. And third, there's the Edo period entertainment industry, which took the already legendary reputation of ninja and inflated it into something superhuman. Let's pull these apart. During the Sengoku period, roughly 1467 to 1615, Japan was fractured into dozens of competing domains. Warfare wasn't just about battles, it was about intelligence. The Bansen Shukai, compiled in 1676 but drawing on earlier traditions, is one of the most important texts we have on shinobi arts. It describes techniques for infiltration, gathering information, spreading false reports, and manipulating enemy decision-making. Critically, it talks about something called Joho Kosaku, essentially information operations. Shinobi were trained to enter enemy territory, assess fortifications, and report back, but they were also trained to plant false information. A shinobi might spread rumors in a castle town that a particular mountain pass was unguarded when it actually wasn't, or that a lord's grain stores were full when they were nearly empty. This is real, this is documented. But notice what it isn't. It's not a real estate transaction, it's military deception, which every culture in history has practiced. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because fake castles were absolutely a real thing in Japanese warfare. They just had nothing to do with selling property. The practice was called gijo, sometimes translated as decoy castle or false fortification. Military commanders would order the construction of rudimentary defensive positions designed to mislead enemy scouts about troop positions, strength, or intended movements. Takeda Shingen, one of the most celebrated strategists of the Sengoku period, reportedly used dummy encampments and false fortifications to confuse Uesugi Kenshin during their prolonged rivalry in the Kawanakajima campaigns. The idea was straightforward. If your enemy's scouts see what looks like a fortified position on a hilltop, they have to account for it. They have to divert troops, adjust their battle plans, maybe delay an advance. Even if the fortification is just bamboo poles with cloth stretched between them, the mere appearance of a defensive position changes the calculus of war. This is not unique to Japan, by the way. The Allies used inflatable tanks and plywood aircraft before D-Day. The Romans built false camps. Deception in war is universal. But in Japan, this practice got mythologized. By the time Edo period writers and kabuki playwrights got hold of these stories, the nuance was gone. Shinobi weren't just spies and scouts anymore. They were supernatural tricksters who could build entire castles overnight and fool anyone. The leap from shinobi spread false intelligence about fortifications to ninja-sold fake castles to gullible lords happened gradually through decades of increasingly exaggerated storytelling. Let's talk about what shinobi actually did with regard to land and territory, because the truth is plenty dramatic without the embellishment. The most well-documented shinobi operations involved infiltrating castle towns and reporting on genuine defensive weaknesses. Before Oda Nobunaga's brutal invasion of Iga province in 1581, the Iga shinobi had successfully defended their homeland partly through superior intelligence about the surrounding terrain. They knew every path, every water source, every defensible ridge. Their advantage wasn't trickery about fake properties. It was encyclopedic knowledge of real geography. There are also records of shinobi being used to sabotage actual fortifications, not fake ones. Setting fires inside castle walls, contaminating water supplies, opening gates from the inside during sieges. The Iranki, a military chronicle describing Nobunaga's Iga campaigns, details how Iga resistance fighters used their intimate knowledge of the landscape to set ambushes and evade larger forces. This is the real ninja story. Not con artists in the property market, but people with such deep knowledge of terrain and human psychology that they could punch far above their weight against professional armies. The Shoninki, another key shinobi text from 1681, devotes significant sections to understanding human behavior, reading social situations, and exploiting trust. A shinobi's greatest weapon was not a throwing star or a smoke bomb. It was the ability to make someone believe something that wasn't true. In that sense, the myth of the ninja real estate agent captures something emotionally accurate about shinobi craft, even though the specific scenario is invented. There's a reason this particular myth is so sticky, and it goes beyond just being a fun story. Modern culture has a specific hunger for narratives where the clever underdog outwits the powerful through brains rather than brawn. The ninja real estate scam is basically an Ocean's 11 heist set in feudal Japan. It's irresistible. It also plays into a broader pattern of how we mythologize ninja. The historical shinobi were, by most accounts, from lower social strata. They were commoners, farmers, and members of marginalized communities who developed unconventional warfare techniques because they couldn't compete with samurai armies in open battle. Turning them into master swindlers who could trick wealthy daimyo is, in a way, a class revenge fantasy. The little guys outsmarting the powerful elite. That's a story people want to be true. And social media has accelerated the process. A post claiming ninja sold fake castles gets shared thousands of times because it's surprising and entertaining. The correction that shinobi did practice sophisticated deception, but not in this specific way, is less shareable. It requires nuance. Nuance doesn't trend, but here's what I think is worth remembering. The real history of shinobi deception is not less impressive than the myth. It's just different. Spreading false intelligence that causes an enemy army to march into an ambush is arguably more impressive than a property scam because the stakes were immediate and lethal. If your disinformation failed, you didn't just lose a sale, you died. So here's what I want you to argue about. Given that shinobi were genuinely skilled at psychological manipulation and strategic deception, and given that fake fortifications were a real military tactic, is it possible that something resembling a territory-based con did happen at least once during the Sengoku period, and simply went unrecorded because the victim was too embarrassed to document it? Or is the entire concept fundamentally incompatible with how feudal Japanese land ownership and military intelligence actually worked? Drop your case in the comments because I think there's a legitimate debate there. And if you want more stories where the myth and the reality are both worth knowing, this channel is where that happens. Subscribe and stick around.